In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a drawstring waistband. Drawstring waistbands are a good alternative to just doing a regular elastic waistband, but in some projects, like the one I'm going to show you today, it's an elastic plus a drawstring waistband. So let's get started. So here I have my pattern piece for my pants front, and you'll notice over here a marking which looks very much as if you were doing a buttonhole. Now the buttonhole marking they put on patterns is a straight line, and then there's two perpendicular lines on either side. So what this buttonhole is for, or this mark is for, is telling you that you need to put a buttonhole here in order so you can create a nice clean opening for your drawstring to come in and out of. So instead of just cutting a hole into our waistband and risk fraying our fabric, we have a nice buttonhole, so it's going to be look nice and finished. So you're going to transfer this marking and any other markings that you have on your pattern piece in general onto your fabric pieces that are at the pants front. Here's my fabric pieces for my pants front. I have two of them. I had to cut two of this pattern piece, and on both of them I transferred my marking. So here's the one for the buttonhole, and then on this side I have another one for the buttonhole. Now the next step, before we just go ahead and start creating a buttonhole right here, you need this area stabilized. And the best way to do that is with lightweight interfacing. So you're going to cut out little squares of lightweight interfacing that's just big enough to cover your area, and you need two of them because you need them for both sides of the front. And you're going to iron this on, and you'll see one side has the little bubbles and the other side is nice and soft and smooth. So the bubble side is the side with the glue, and so this goes to the wrong side of your fabric, so the opposite of where you drew your mark and where you're going to have the front of your pants be. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick a pin directly in the middle of it so I know where it is on this side, and place this right into the center. And I'm just going to stick a pin to hold it, but I'm going to remove this pin before I iron it because I don't want to ruin my pin before I do that, since you need a really hot iron in order to iron that interfacing on. So you're going to go ahead and do this to both sides, iron on the interfacing, and then we're going to create the buttonhole on both sides of the front. So now I'm going to go ahead and do my buttonhole on both sides of my pants front. And I went ahead and I changed my foot to a buttonhole foot, and yours may look a little bit different than mine. For different machines they look differently, but you just want to pick the one that's right for your machine. I have my buttonhole mark here, and depending on how you do your buttons on your machine, basically you're going to do the end of the buttonhole here and then the sides alongside this perpendicular line here, and then go ahead and do your end. On my machine, I just hit my buttonhole button, and it just switches in between doing the top and the bottom to the sides. Now your machine may have a dial where you get to switch in between doing the bottom and then which side you're going to be doing. So you just need to look at your machine. We also have a video on how to do buttonholes, so you can also look at that. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in the end here. Put my needle down, and you're going to want to make sure that your fabric is as straight as you could possibly get it, because that really affects whether or not your buttonhole comes out straight. So it looks pretty good. And I'm going to go ahead and do the end here. And it's just going back and forth in the end, forming the end of the buttonhole. And then when it stops, I'm now going to do the side, holding my fabric as straight as I can. And then I'm going to stop once I get to the other end of that bar. And if you have trouble seeing it, like my marker kind of blends with my fabric, I'm going to put my needle down, lift my foot, and then just look. You see how much further I go, and I'm about halfway now. So I'm just going to continue on to the end. And that looks like that's the end there. Just going to lift it, check, and it is. So now I'm going to lift my foot rotate my fabric because now it's going to go in the other direction. And you just want to straighten this out as much as you can. Okay. And now I'm going to go ahead and do the other end. I'll just straighten out a little more. So now it's doing the other end of the buttonhole. And then when that stops, I just switch settings, and now I'm going to go up and do the other side. And then once I hit the end, I'm just going to do a couple of stitches into the end, which I'm at now. And now my buttonhole is complete. So now I'm just going to do it on my other one. Here's my completed buttonhole. Now at this point, what I'm going to do with my buttonholes is I'm going to fold it directly in half. Here's it on the other side, like this. And I'm going to take some very sharp scissors, and I'm just going to do a little snip directly into the middle. Okay. And then I'm going to take my scissors into that snip I just did. And I'm just going to cut up the middle like that. This one's a little hard for me to do on that side, so I'm going to do it on the back side. Okay, so that's where the drawstring is going to come out of once it's inside your waistband right there in that buttonhole. So now you're just going to continue on with the rest of your project until you get to the waistband part, and then we're going to continue on to show you how to do this. So I continued following my pattern directions in order to continue working on my pants, but now I'm back at the waistband step again. So you can see on the other side of the seam, I have my buttonholes that I created for the drawstring to go through. The next step is now to baste the sides of each of our seams up here at the waistband down probably around 3 inches. And the reason why we're doing that, you're going to do a basting stitch on this side and on this side as well, is because when we're sticking in our elastic through the waistband, if you don't sew it down, it'll have a tendency to get caught right underneath your seam, and it'll be very difficult to get past this. So if this is sewn down, once you pass your elastic through it, it's just going to go right over very easily. So it just makes it a lot easier for us when we're doing it. So any place along the top of your garment, your pants, your skirt, your shorts, or whatever, if you have a seam that you created, either a front, back, or side seams, you're going to do a basting stitch right alongside each side of the seam here. So I'm going to go ahead and break out my machine so I can do that, and then we get ready for the next step. So I'm going to go ahead and start basting. And the basting is the largest stitch that your machine will do. And since this is a temporary stitch, you don't have to worry about doing back stitching. We're just putting the stitch in to tack these sides down so that we'll have an easier time getting our elastic or drawstring through. So once that part is complete, you can take this stitch out. And I'm just going as close to the edge as I can. I want to make sure that the sides of my seam lay flat. And I would just do it for maybe about 3 inches down and just kind of eyeball it. And this is just for the length of where the waistband is going to extend. So I guess it just depends on how wide your waistband is going to be and how far down you go, but that's how quick it is. So I don't do a back stitch. I've already done this side, so now I just have to do it for the remaining seams that I have along the top now. After you finish completing all your basting stitches, the next step then is to form your casing. And to form your casing, you're going to fold over the top of your garment down to whatever length that your pattern requires it. And this is dependent on how wide your elastic is. So for my particular pattern, it wants me to fold it down 1 3/8 inch. So I'm going to do this all the way around, and this is the wrong side of the fabric, so you're rolling the right side on top of the wrong side. So all you're going to do is just fold it over. You're going to measure it. If it's 1 3/8 inch or however long that the pattern directions give you on your particular pattern, you're going to put a pin in it. And I'm going to go all the way around. And after you finish doing this and you pin all the way around, then I would press it to make sure this top fold here is crisp. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish doing this, and I'm going to iron it, and then we're going to do the next step. I went ahead and pressed the top of my waistband here. And now the next step is this raw edge here on the end. We're going to fold this under 1/4 inch like that. So it's going to be all nice and clean on the inside. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my sewing gauge, and before I was at 1 3/8, obviously yours is going to differ, and I'm going to shorten it by 1/4 inch and just move my little blue slider here to the 1 1/8 inch mark. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this pin. I'm going to fold this under to what I think is going to be 1/4 inch, and then I'm going to measure that remainder part. And it looks like it's 1 1/8. So then I'm just going to stick a pin through it. And just as the other one, I'm going to do this all the way around, and then once I have enough pins in it, I'm going to then press it again, just because I want my clothes to look really professional and neat, and ironing is the best way to get that look. You always want to iron your stuff. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish this. And the next step then is sewing right along the edge to close up this casing. I finished pinning all the way around, so I have 1/4 inch tucked in here at the bottom. The only thing I want to point out is after we finish sewing this along the bottom here, then we're going to stick in the elastic. So you should have 2 different options. If your pattern asks for you to leave a hole in your seam, and I have mine right here, then you stitch along the whole bottom, doing a back stitch all the way around. If you do not have this hole right here, what you then need to do is you need to leave a hole depending on the size of your elastic here at the bottom. So I would just create an X with my pins, and I would know to leave this area open. So I'd start here, sew all the way around, end here, and do a back stitch. So now I'm able to stick my elastic up through the hole right here and make sure that it gets into my casing. So it either can go in here, or if you already left a hole into your side seam, you can go ahead and stick your elastic through here, and you don't have to worry about doing an X or anything like that. So I'm going to go ahead and get the machine now so I can continue making my waistband and sew up the bottom of this casing. I'm going to go ahead and start stitching all along the bottom of my casing now, and I'm going to get as close to the edge as possible without going over to this other side, because we want to make sure this casing is fully enclosed, unless you have to leave the X's in order to put your elastic. But other than that, fully enclosed. And you're definitely going to do a regular stitch with back stitch. And I'm just going to go all the way around. So the next step is measuring how much elastic you need to put in the waistband. And you may be thinking, why do I need to put elastic if I'm doing a drawstring? This is just your preference. You can just do a drawstring if you wish. I kind of like having the elastic as well, because then when I undo the drawstring, my garment doesn't instantly fall down. So in order to figure out how much elastic you need, if you choose to do that, you're going to wrap it around the area that you feel like your garment is going to rest. So it could be at your waist, or some people like wearing it a little bit lower, so you might go 1 inch below your waist. Now you're going to do this bare skin. I'm just doing it over my shirt, but you want to get it so it goes around and fits as comfortably as you can. Not too tight, you're not stretching the elastic, you're just loosely putting it around it, but not too loose either. And then you're gonna mark with your finger where the elastic meets when it goes around. And to this length, you're going to add another inch because we need length in order to sew the two sides of the elastic together. So I'm gonna mark that, I'm gonna cut it, and that is going to be my length that I'm gonna put inside my casing. Now that my elastic is cut, I'm ready to stick it into my waistband. So here's my elastic, and the trick for sticking it in, so you're gonna get a safety pin, and you're going to attach it to the end of the elastic like this. That way you have something kind of hard to grab onto as you're pulling it through the waistband. It just makes it a little bit easier to hold on to. So I'm going to stick it through my hole like this. The first part is always a little hard. There we go. And you just want to make sure that your elastic doesn't twist around as it's going through. We want to keep that flat. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to gather some fabric onto the head of my safety pin. Then I'm going to grab the fabric here and I'm going to pull, and the elastic will go through. So I'm going to gather on the head, pull, and I'm going to keep doing this until my elastic comes out on the other side where it went in. So I'm just going to try to make sure that the end of my elastic doesn't get all the way sucked up into my waistband, because I need it to stay out here so then I can sew the two sides of elastic together. That way it'll gather, and that's the whole point of putting the elastic in there. So I'm just going to continue doing this until I get around to the other side. My elastic came out on the other end here, so I'm going to take the safety pin off now. And then the next step is I'm going to overlap the elastic ends by about a 1/2 inch, and I'm going to pin it. So I'm going to overlap them like this. And just stick a pin in there. And what we're going to do is we're going to sew the elastic ends together. And the general technique is what you do is you sew a square shape stitch. So you go down and then you turn it so it's perpendicular, and you sew, and then up, and then sew across to make a square. But before you do that, you might just want to pull this through, and then just to try on your garment and make sure the elastic is a comfortable width for you, because once you sew all this together and we stick it in there, it's really hard to change it. So I definitely recommend you trying it. So after you have and it fits good, you keep your pin in there, and then you just bring it over to the sewing machine so we can do the stitching across it. I'm going to now sew my elastic, and I'm just doing a regular stitch. And I would probably recommend doing this a couple of times on the elastic, only because you don't want to take the chance your elastic's going to break while it's inside the waistband. So I'm just going to turn this. Whoops. Turn this way now. And it doesn't have to be perfectly straight, because nobody's going to see your stitches once it's inside there. But just want to make sure that it's really sewn on well. So now I'm going this way. Okay, now I'm going to turn it this way. So I'm just forming a square. All right, now I got to the end. Now it's a square, perfect square. But I'm going to go around one more time, just because I really want to make sure that this is a strong stitch. So I'm just going to finish doing that. And then we're going to go ahead and stick the elastic back in the waistband. The elastic is now sewn together, so I'm just going to stick it back into the hole. Oops, a little stuck there. And then I'm going to distribute my gathering up here on the top, so it's more evenly distributed. So that's slowly getting in there. There we go. So I'm just gonna adjust this All right, so the next step now is we need to slip stitch our tiny hole here closed. If you did your elastic through a hole down here, you can just straighten it out like this and then machine stitch it closed. So that's a little bit easier. But if you have a hole like I do that's inside the seam, you need to slip stitch that. So we're gonna get a little bit closer so you can see how that is done. I'm gonna do a slip stitch for this hole right here. As you can see, the elastic underneath. And slip stitching is a hand stitch that is mainly used for sewing up holes because it's a very subtle stitch. If you do it correctly, you're not going to see your stitch marks. So how you do it is you're going to take your knotted threaded needle and you're going to take your needle and you're going to go up the side, just one side. I have a side here and a side here. And you're going to go up the inside fold of one of those sides. And you don't need to take a lot of fabric, just a little bit. You're going to pull your thread through and you're going to tuck your knot inside your hole because we don't want to see the knot. So once you have that through, you're then going to take a little bit of the inside fold of the other side. You're going to pull it through. And then you're going to go back to your original side that you have and just grab a little bit of that fabric. And you're just kind of moving along this way. So you're slowly making your way so that you eventually get the whole hole. And as you're pulling it, you don't want to pull too tight, just tight enough, and you'll see that the hole will slowly close with your stitches. So I did that side, so now I'm going back to this other side. So basically what you're doing is you're just zigzagging back and forth between the two sides and just grabbing a little bit of the fabric. And you're not grabbing the fabric out here, just close to the hole itself where the fabric folds. So I'm going back to my original side and grabbing a little bit of fabric. And this is a very small hole, so it doesn't actually take much in order to stitch it closed. Mine pretty much looks closed because now if I fold it in half, you cannot see the elastic underneath. You don't really see my stitches either. So this is just about done. I'm just gonna grab a little bit more from my other side here, and then I'm gonna do a knot. So in order to do a knot, what you're gonna do is you're gonna grab a little bit of fabric, and so your thread forms a loop here, and then I'm going to bring my needle through my loop, slowly pull it, because if you pull it too fast sometimes you'll accidentally get a knot at a part of your thread that you don't want to have it. So there's one knot. I usually like to do two because I want to make sure it does not come out. Oops. Okay. It came off my needle, but that's okay. This is my last knot. And I'm just gonna pull it through. There. So now all I have to do is just trim that off. And the slip stitch is done now. Now I'm gonna go ahead and put in my drawstring. And your drawstring length should include going around your waist, but also enough to tie it into a knot or a bow. So I would definitely use at least 2.5 yards. If it's a little bit long, you can always cut it, but we want to make sure that we have enough. I'm just using this decorative, well, it's not a thread, but it's kind of like cording. You can use ribbon, you can use twill tape. So it's whatever you could basically fit in these little buttonholes. So again, what I did is I attached it to a safety pin, so it's a little bit easier for me to get through. Because mine tends to unravel, I put tape at the end. And at the very end of mine, I tied a knot. I'm gonna tie a knot into this one as well, but I already went ahead and tied a knot at this so it doesn't go through the hole. And once this comes out in my other buttonhole over here, I'm going to again tie a knot. And then I could take off the tape and just let it be frayed, but the knot will keep it from fraying any further. So I'm just gonna put this into my buttonhole, and my safety pin's a little bit big for the hole, but that's all right, it'll work. And the same technique is I'm gonna gather on the safety pin and then I'm gonna pull the fabric. So then my cording is going through the casing on top of the elastic that's already in there. So once this is done, it'll look like a very decorative drawstring, but also be very functional too, because I can make my pants even tighter if I wish to. So I'm just gonna go ahead and finish pulling this in until I get to my other buttonhole on the other side. The last step to completing this part of your project is now to remove the basting stitch that you had put in earlier before you started sewing the waistband. So I'm just going to remove all of my stitches, and there's no back stitches, so it's fairly easy to get out once you get your seam ripper under there. And that's the last step. I have removed all the basting stitches along my waistband here, and I've also trimmed and tied knots at the end of my cording here. So I made this a little bit shorter because it was a little long, and put the knots in. And now I have a drawstring and elastic waistband.
Our book, Professor Pincushion's Beginner Guide to Sewing, Garment Making for Nervous Newbies, is now available to order. Go to professorpincushion.com/books or click on the link in the description to see a list of vendors where you can purchase it.